Well, folks, it's that time of the week again. It is the DC Sports Huddle, as always, presented by our friends at MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fan's paradise. I am Rob Woodfork, moving with the agility of Ron Rivera when ducking questions about the ownership situation in Washington. George Wallace, who is deceptively fast. He runs a really good 40. And Dave Preston only wears baggy shirts because he is hiding a build that is becoming of his 40. What is happening? What is that noise?
You hear that noise?
That's construction in my building.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, let's say the balcony. You know how I lost my balcony?
Yeah.
That's the balcony.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
How's anybody supposed to sleep over there?
We're not supposed to.
How are we supposed to huddle? Like, I was in the middle of making a bunch of dad jokes related to the NFL Combine, which of course is where.
Well, why am I deceptively fast? I don't look like I could be fast.
You don't look like you can run a 4.40, but I've seen you do a 4.8.
Yeah,
Fine. Yeah, it's a little deceptive.
Under 5.
This is a great start. So let's talk about some of the things that came out at the NFL Combine. Ron Rivera spoke to the media, as do most front-facing individuals with NFL teams. And one of the big things that come out of that, I mean, yes, he ducked the question about the ownership, but he did touch on the quarterback subject, which has been one that has been a hot button topic in Washington for, 40 years now. So he made the admission that basically Sam Howell is not QB1. He's just going to go into the offseason as such, and that they are looking to add a veteran signal caller. So why not have an exercise where we discuss what quarterback that might be? Now, it bears pointing out Washington's had 12 starting quarterbacks just since 2018. That is not.
I know who it's not going to be.
Who's it not going to be?
Your guy.
Who's my guy?
Cam.
It's not going to be Cam. You're right. It's not going to be Cam. I've officially given up hope of that. But by far, the most in the NFL.
Write that down.
Is that? No, well, it doesn't mean I'm not going to bring him up again.
Right.
By far, the 12 quarterbacks since 2018, Washington has the most starting quarterbacks used in the NFL. 4 teams have 8, so it's really by a pretty wide margin.
That's nuts.
So that obviously includes Taylor Heineke. We're ruling him out of this exercise, one, because it's boring and it's played out, and we've laid out this reason in previous episodes. So who, guys, do we think would be a home run target for Washington? And even though it doesn't feel like, and I will start with this, it doesn't feel like they're going for a home run. They're probably just going for a double or even an RBI single or something like that. But I think a home run, Lamar Jackson. That's going to cost you probably 3 first-round picks. He's probably going to get the franchise tag in Baltimore. And just everything that's going on with that situation, it just feels like that is headed toward divorce. And that's because I think the Ravens are a better organization than, say, one that would franchise him twice and then just let him walk away at the end of that.
Nobody's done that.
Yeah, who would do that? Who would do that? So if I'm Washington, I send 3 first-round picks, probably Daron Payne, because that's the only way that you're going to make the money work. Right, because that's $18.9 million after they just franchise tagged him, and he gets a fully guaranteed Jackson, that is, gets a fully guaranteed 4-year deal. Maybe you can work in some exit ramps for something like drastic, like a career-ending injury, but that is a guy who is who's box office, because everybody's going to want to see him play. He's good character. And quite frankly, you're gonna have to pay for a quarterback at some point. It's better. I would rather pay $45 million a year for Lamar Jackson than $35 million a year for Derek Carr. And also, and before you get, and I know what George is gonna say, you're gonna talk about the ownership situation, right? And I think the ownership situation actually plays into Washington's advantage there, because if you give him a fully guaranteed contract, other teams aren't gonna like it, other owners aren't gonna like it. And you can just blame that on Snyder on the way out. He's already pissed them all off. So what's one more transgression against him on the way out? Tell me I'm crazy, George Wallace.
You're crazy, number one. Number two, you just told me to tell you, so I'm going to tell you. I don't know about the ownership situation. I just don't know about him. I mean, he doesn't really fit, I don't think.
Well, I
Does
mean,
he?
look, you have a new offensive coordinator, and if he's who you think he is, then
Yeah.
and you're not going to bring number 15 with you from Kansas City. So if you're not going to do that, get the guy who's probably the next tier down, who, by the way, was a unanimous MVP just a couple of years ago. There's only 2 guys in the history of the league who've been a unanimous MVP.
No, you're right. And I just don't know. I just don't know about paying him that money. I just don't. I don't know if he's.
And here's the one thing that gives me pause.
Yeah.
FedEx Field. And Jason Wright, in my interview with him last month, he did say that they did some improvements to FedEx Field, the playing surface, and it's not the disaster that it was, say 10 years ago when RG3, sidebar, Lamar Jackson's back up in Baltimore for a few years, shredded his knee on that surface. Now, I don't trust that field entirely just yet. Not for a guy who's as dynamic as Lamar Jackson, but it also bears pointing out he did have that ridiculously long run against them in 2020, and when the Ravens beat the then Washington football team at FedEx Field. But George is ruling out Lamar Jackson as well.
Yeah, let me finish.
Okay,
I don't know.
I'm
here's the
passionate
thing.
about this.
I don't. I really think that they want to see what they've got in Sam Howell. And if they bring a quarterback, and I know you said home run, again, this is not, I don't think it's just not going to happen.
No, it's not, I don't think it's going to
Yeah.
happen, but I'm just
Right.
laying out the scenario for which it could. Yeah.
Right. But I think the route you're going is a veteran, is a Derek Carr type. I don't want to say it, but even Marcus Mariota was released yesterday. Somebody like that. It's going to come in here because I really think they're going to see what they've got in Sam Howell. They drafted him, and they just
That's great.
time to move.
Dude, I'm not editing this out.
But I really think that's what they're going to do, because also Dan's not paying for anybody. Dan's not bringing a guy. He tells Ron to go ahead and conduct free agency like normal and do what you want to do. But when it comes down to it, Dan's not going to, because he could sign that deal and then leave it to the next owner to deal with. That's his problem and headache. But even if he does, who knows how long this thing's going to take now with everything going on. I just don't think Dan's bringing in and signing anybody and giving anybody any money at this point. It's just a weird situation. I know Ron says it, but I don't know how real those conversations have been. I haven't found that out. But I don't even know how active they're going to be, in free agency. I have no idea.
Yeah, I would say that the second tier, the more likely scenario is going to be a second tier guy. You mentioned Marcus Mariota. That's one of the guys that because here's the thing. If you're going to go the veteran route and you're bringing in somebody who's going to compete with and or mentor Sam Howell, then Marcus Mariota, and the guy who I think would be great for that role would be a Jacoby Brissett. A guy, both of these guys have extensive starting experience in the league. They're good enough to win you games and you feel comfortable with starting them for a spell, even if it ends up being the whole season if Howell implodes. But they're not big enough names or big enough talents that it's going to step on Sam Howell's development. He's not going to be looking over his shoulder at him like, say, a Taylor Heineke, who the fan base loves, even though he stinks, Dave Preston.
No, and real quick, but that is so true. That is a guy you wouldn't be sitting here saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe Jacoby Brissett's on the bench," or "I can't believe Marcus Mariota is not playing because they have him here." Where last year Carson Wentz, that's what you would have been saying,
right?
If you have that, and Taylor Heineke, not necessarily saying we would say, "Oh my God, I can't believe Taylor's sitting," but the second Howell gets sacked or the second Howell throws a pick, Heineke chants go up at FedEx Field. That's why you cannot have him here.
Right. Dave Preston, you can unmute yourself.
Well, you guys have mentioned everybody over the last 10 minutes. So I know.
Good answer, Dave. Good answer.
Exactly. I think a Jacoby Brissett type is probably the best option. It'd be nice to bring in a Lamar Jackson. It'd be, even okay to bring in a Derek Carr. But I think that for what you've got with this franchise, Sam Howell, even though he's not the unquestioned starter, he is the leader in the clubhouse going into this thing. He is the only one with an upside, in the mix, obviously, as Carson Wentz has been released. Taylor Heineke is a free agent dangling in the wind, who, if he comes back, it's going to be a somewhat awkward situation because the fan base loves him, in a way that in a way that they've not warmed up to, a ton of guys who have been here since Kirk Cousins, when you think about it, because, even though Alex Smith had a fantastic story coming back from the compound fracture, did people really warm up to him? Did people really say, wow, I can't wait to see what he can do on the football field, because he threw for, I think, 179 yards, 2 or 3 straight weeks at one point. So I think a Jacoby Brissett, a guy who's taken snaps in the league elsewhere, a guy who's not necessarily a threat, but a guy who can maybe be a mentor for Sam Howell this year. That's the best option. That's what they're probably going to go with. I'm more interested to see what they do to the offensive line, what they do to the secondary moving forward, as opposed to focusing on the quarterback. It feels like so many times we're focused on the shiny object, and that is going to be the quarterback. What do they do with Kirk Cousins? What's going on with Alex Smith? Oh my goodness, Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz. When you really need to build this team through an offensive line, they had a bad offensive line last fall, and it cost them.
But here's the thing: they've had good offensive lines and bad quarterbacks, and still haven't won. So I mean, I agree with your point, but they do have to upgrade that position. Here's an interesting name that I didn't think about until yesterday. Sam Darnold is a pretty high ceiling veteran. I mean, he was a number 3 pick in the draft. I know he hasn't shown a ton in 2 years. He's dealt with injuries, but he's only 26 years old. And if you can bring him in and kick the tires and see what he's got in the tank, that might not be a bad pickup.
Why not? Yeah, I mean, I think at this point he's a humble guy, and if he's not a humble guy, boom, he's gone. You're not giving him any guaranteed money. So you bring him on and you say, here's a chance for you to prove yourself that you can earn an NFL paycheck and maybe get a look somewhere else if things don't work out here. And coming into this, things are not going to be designed for you to work out here necessarily. Where the tie is going to go to Sam Howell and not you.
Right. And then on top of that, I mean, I think his career derailed. I think it was a combination of injuries and just being with bad organization. Yeah. I mean, he's at least not publicly anyway. It doesn't sound like he's had like a Zach Wilson situation where he's just a total, head case and has alienated teammates or anything to that extent. I think he's still a pretty good prospect if you can resurrect that. But I would say Derek Carr's too expensive. Aaron Rodgers is too insane if that ends up being an option. And Jacoby Brissett might just be right. That might be the right fit right there. Here's another guy who's not on anybody's radar, but I think given the Eric Bieniemy hire is a guy that maybe you pay attention to. Shane Buechele was like a third stringer with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was on and off their practice squad, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure Dave Preston will remember him as the Texas quarterback that came to College Park and got beat a few years ago. He's been a backup in Kansas City, had a completion percentage north of 60% every year in college. He's basically Taylor Heineke with less mobility and more fundamentally sound game. So, a guy with a football IQ like that, that's something that Ron Rivera has talked quite a bit about. He doesn't really have the athleticism you want at that position, but it might be an interesting guy to hold a clipboard if some of these bigger name options don't pan out.
2 things I like about him. One, he has experience in the Kansas City offense. So even though they're not doing a direct lift from what the Chiefs did to Washington, he can at least be he can be a teaching assistant. How when you take a college course and there was a TA who was a grad student, he'd taken the course before, he can at least help you along the way. And 2, he does have experience at FedEx Field because Texas lost that game at FedEx. And believe it or not, there was water in the press box. I think it was rain. It was not sewage. It was a leaky press box because it was raining that day. So he's familiar with FedEx Field, and we're familiar with a bad press box when he's there.
Or they could talk Chad Henne out of retiring and bring him here because he was with them also.
I mean, he's made a lot of money in his career. I mean, I would love to have a gig where you just have to be ready to play and never play and make a bunch of money to never get hit.
Him and Chase Daniel, right?
Chase
Back
Daniel-
up.
But there's always the chance.
System.
There's always the chance that you might get called into a game. And depending on who you're facing, if your starter gets knocked out, maybe that, the defense is pretty bad. It reminds me when the years ago, the Hall of Fame punter Ray Guy was the emergency quarterback for the Raiders. They played the Bears at Soldier Field, and this is a year before they won the Super Bowl, and they knocked out Jim Plunkett. They knocked out Mark Wilson, and they're like, hey, emergency punter, Ray Guy, you're next. He's like, not having any of that. I don't feel good. My arm is sore. I am not doing that.
And look, and that was in an era where you could body slam a quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't.
They did.
Right, they did.
You don't. Yeah. And nowadays, if you as much as sneeze on a quarterback, it's a 15-yard penalty and you're probably going to get fined.
Hey, would you say that we're talking about the popularity of Taylor Heineke? Let's just go backwards.
Okay.
Would you say he is?
Taylor Heineke is going backwards, but go on.
Well, yeah. I'm talking about and I don't consider Kirk Cousins as the backup.
No.
Colt Brennan or Babe Laufenberg. That's the status in this town that Taylor Heineke's at. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I say he's in that territory, and the thing is, he's had regular season success too. I mean, he's had he had that one playoff game against Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
The one playoff, he had the January that equaled those guys' Augusts. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because at least in those Augusts, you're like, yeah, whatever, these are preseason games, but it's like, no, this is against Tom Brady. This is against Tampa Bay. And then you find out, no, this is against the eventual Super Bowl champ. And he went toe to toe with these guys.
And here's the thing, the bar is so low. They lost that game by 11 points. He had like one touchdown pass and one rushing touchdown that they're literally still making t-shirts about him diving.
They celebrated it.
So it's just the bar is so low. Like they didn't win the game. They didn't advance. They weren't even particularly close. They just weren't blown out because they didn't have their starting quarterback. And oh, by the way, they made the playoffs with a losing record that year. So they
keep in mind though, that this is a franchise who Bruce Allen used to say, hey, we have the best preseason record and what have you, or either he or Gruden. Somebody said it to the point where we said, are we going to be hanging a banner for that?
Yeah.
That's a Baltimore thing right there. Baltimore, their big preseason win streak. Real quick, George Wallace, how do we feel about the franchise tag on Daron Payne? We knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a surprise, but how do we feel about that?
I mean, it's fine. He was going to go. If you let him hit free agency, he's going to go somewhere. I mean, he's going to make 18.3 million, whatever. It's a guy you want to hopefully lock up. Of the last 3 off seasons, when they've locked up Jonathan Allen, Terry McLaurin, I don't feel as confident in this one, just again because of the ownership situation.
So this is a 1-year rental, basically.
Yeah. Unless somebody else comes in and just blows out of the water and signs him to whatever he wants to do. But I mean, it's a guy you got to keep. There was no brand. There's nobody else you're going to do that tag to. So for me, it's fine. He gets to stay, and hopefully, balls out like he said, like he did last year. And that would be
here's the thing. I have mixed feelings about it. Yes, he's a good player. He's good for the locker room. Like you want to reward those players. They spent a first-round pick on a defensive lineman for 4 straight years. So you've already paid Jonathan Allen. You've already made that commitment to him, as you should. He's probably the best of the lot.
Yeah.
Just talking about the defensive line. Daron Payne is probably the next best player, but you have 2 edge rushers coming up next. You have Sweat coming up.
That's a fair point.
Next. And then you have Chase Young, and you still don't know what you have in Chase Young.
I'll tell you what, that's leaning the other way, though.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm not prepared to call him a bust, but he's in a point where 2023, he needs to be lights out good if he's going to stay here. So, if you pay Daron Payne, let's say that you give him the big long-term contract. If you give him the big long-term contract, then that's going to prohibit you, presumably, from being able to pay one of those at least one of those edge rushers, if not both of them. And so,
bird in hand.
And I get that, but it's like, this is not the 90s or the early 2000s where, yes, you need to have those 2 big tackles in the middle to stop the run. People aren't running anymore. They're passing. So you have to have the edge rushers, and you need to be able to dedicate resources to that because that's going to be more expensive. You just used a second round pick on Mathis at defensive tackle. Presumably you like this guy, and I know he had this season-ending injury as a rookie, but I don't know that beyond this franchise tag, I don't know that I keep Daron Payne beyond 2023 unless he gives you a hometown discount, and I don't get the idea that he's going to do that.
I think you need to keep either Sweat or Chase Young, one of the two, and you let the chips fall where they may, because you've got Allen. You need to figure out which of the edge rushers you can keep. You hope to keep one of those edge rushers with Daron Payne, and if you can't, unfortunately, you have to part ways. But that's why these are tough decisions. That's why this isn't 1985 when you could keep guys, but then again, you couldn't acquire guys. So the NFL of today allows you to really replenish and refresh your roster in a way that you couldn't way back when.
Right. And that's just my thing. And we're going to have to wait for George to come back. By the way, folks, if you haven't heard the news, sports on WTOP has shifted from 15 and 45 as it has been for many years, dating back to when I was a kid growing up. Now we are at 25 and 55. Money News has shifted to 10 and 4. What is it? 10 and 40. Yeah. I had to do the math in my head. So if you're listening to us on air and you're coming on at 15 and 45, you're 10 minutes early now as of this past Monday at the end of February.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting. As a matter of fact, let's discuss it a little bit until George gets back. So it is different. What I like about it, though, is that we have, again, which we used to have in previous, iterations of our clock. We used to have a buffer between sports and the next element where you had a spot or something that would kind of separate, the headlines and so forth. And I feel like that's necessary because a lot of times, and especially you, Dave, have a kicker at the end of a sportscast. We're yucking it up with the anchors. We're having a good time. And then you don't want to come out of that and then talk about, death and destruction in unfortunate locale. So I feel like having the buffer back is incredibly clutch for us, but also, it does provide a challenge in that our sportscasts are a little bit shorter.
It changes. I mean, it does. Yeah.
Right. Especially during, I'm speaking for like my shit, like during morning drive, like I think you're a little more, I think you're pinched a little bit more.
Right.
At night when I've been doing sports and things are happening, at a pretty, the sports are happening.
Right.
Or Sundays, where it's very heavy in sports and a little lighter on the news blocks. We're afforded a little bit extra time. This kind of, it'll require some work in order to do that under this new format. But yeah, so far so good, right?
I think so. I think, and it's be patient with us because it's going to take a while because this has been, again, as long as you remember, as long as I remember, I've been in the area for 20 plus years. So it's going to take some getting used to, but we hope our listeners are with us. And George, do we have any breaking Capitals news, perhaps?
We do. Yes. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
We'll save it for next week.
Okay.
No, they trade
Lars Eller gone.
We call folks a tease. Yeah. Lars Eller. I mean, look, Lars had the game-winning Stanley Cup clinching goal.
Yeah.
And he also had that goal against Columbus during the same playoffs when they were down 2-0.
And you know what, guys, just like the Burgundy and Gold are going to have to make difficult decisions regarding their free agents. The Capitals are making some difficult decisions over the last week. Dmitry Orlov had been with the team for 686 games, 11 seasons. He's gone. Garnet Hathaway, a guy who's been here for a while, is gone as well. Lars Eller didn't start with the Caps, but he feels like he has been there the entire time. He was on the cup-winning team. It's going to be intriguing between now and Friday when the trading deadline does take place. How many more pieces do get moved? This isn't a total reboot, but I think you have to view this as the powers that be trying to spruce up the roster, spruce up the talent, refresh it for Alex Ovechkin's final run as a player, maybe set things up on this roster for him to maybe get one more deep cup run, because they haven't gotten past the second round with the exception of the Stanley Cup championship in 2019, and they haven't won a playoff series since 2019.
Right. And it's, by the way, they now have 25 picks in the next 3 drafts. That's pretty good.
That's good.
And I hear Ted's quote about, Ovi and not a total rebuild because, or I think it was Ted who said it. And look, if you totally tear it down, then Ovi's not going to get the record, so you got to stay somewhat competitive.
But here's my thing. You can't build a team around the wishes of one player though, and I think I've said on here, Jay Brooks and I always go back and forth about this because he thinks the relentless pursuit of the record is coming at the expense of the team. On a game-to-game basis, I disagree with that because you're talking about scoring goals and you need to outscore the opponent in order to win. I don't think that's, it's not like Bruce Smith.
But don't you think that's what they want?
Record in Washington,
Right.
but that's
Do you have that coin? Do you have a coin? I thought I had the.
Yeah.
Is this the Bruce Smith sack coin? No, it's not. It's
Oh my goodness.
some other piece of
But-
junk that I've got in my apartment.
But I think that it does kind of hold back their need to rebuild because they are older. I mean, what's their record? Second game of back-to-backs. I think they're 1-6-1 at last.
It's not good. It's not, and
so,
it's not just the losses, but they look bad in those losses too,
yes,
guys.
and that's what I'm saying. They look like a team that's old and that's done, and that's not going to have enough gas to get. I mean, they don't look like they're going to make the playoffs, let alone do anything in them. So my thing is, at what point do you say, Ovi, it's been great, like the vast majority of your goals, and I'm sure you'll set a record somewhere or whatever, but if he doesn't want to stick around for a rebuild, I mean, they're probably about 2-3 years late on the rebuild.
Yeah, but don't you think that there's no way there is no way he's going anywhere else to break this record. And when he breaks the record,
and I don't want to see it, and I'm not wishing that, but I'm just from a organizational standpoint, at some point you have to, and we got to get Ben Raby on here and have this discussion in full. But I mean, like at some point you're going to have to hit Control-Alt-Delete on this thing.
It's not going to happen.
I think it's akin.
This is their focus right now. I'm telling you. And when he breaks the record, that's when you're going to see Ted sell this team, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay. I think it's akin to, I don't think they move off from Alex Ovechkin. Right now, it's akin to punting at the 40-yard line, as opposed to, as opposed to if you're at the 50, you punt, but if you're at the 40, you don't. And I think that they're already in the middle of a rebuild, so to speak, and they're trying to rebuild on the fly. And moving on from Alex Ovechkin at this time, it's going to bring you some players back, this, that, and the other thing, but you're going to lose a cradle to grave player. Everything that we say that the Nationals have done wrong in getting out of the Trey Turner and Juan Soto business, it's a similar thing from moving on from Alex Ovechkin, because I want to say he has more than twice as many goals as anybody else on this team, unless TJ Oshie has climbed up with his 15th or 16th or, along those lines. So it's not as though he's the Bruce Smith who's hanging on with 5 sacks a year,
right.
And is on an average team. Alex Ovechkin is one of easily the 2 or 3 reasons why this team is not at the very bottom of the Metropolitan Division.
I mean, but
there's only
2 teams as a buffer right now.
Right.
Third worst.
Don't you think though that this to me, I think their focus right now is Ovi. It's not winning. I do. I think
that's what I'm saying.
I think it's a combination of the two. I think it's a combination of.
That's a problem.
Well,
I get it, but how many times you can have a player that's going to break the all-time? I don't know.
No,
I hear you, but at the same time, he's been here since day one. He's done all of this for the city and the team. If he has a chance to break the all-time scoring record in a Capitals uniform, you bet your ass they're gonna focus on that.
I mean, I guess it is what it is. Also,
they've revamped before. They revamped 8 years ago when they blew out George McPhee, and they they were able to
That's true. Yeah, I
revamp
thought- I
on the
thought they were
fly
cooked after that.
under Barry Trotz. And all of a sudden, they gave us, some great hockey then. So you can rebuild in hockey because you can put together a roster of, it takes 4 line combinations, 3 defensive pairs to put together a winner. And just as difficult it is to put together, a champion, it's difficult to be absolutely awful. So they can rebuild. They do have some pieces. Are things going to get rough? Yes. Are things going to be less than ideal? Of course, but they can continue on this path to where they are a faint contender with Alex Ovechkin being a fantastic ticket and putting butts in those seats.
All right. So let's speaking of putting butts in seats, they've been doing that at Xfinity Center all year long, both men's and women's basketball. The men's team, there was very interesting quote from Jameer Young after the Terps improved to 10-0 on their home court in conference games. The first time they've done that since their first season in the Big Ten. He basically said that this is a Sweet 16 team and maybe better. Do we agree with his assertion, Dave Preston, who is an AP Top 25 voter?
I think that they're a team, yes. And you know what? I got a lot of grief from IU fans. Indiana University, I had them ranked 21st instead of 15th as the consensus did. And IU lost earlier this week to Iowa. So sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not so good.
I think if you have a system.
Yes, I could easily say I could easily see Maryland losing in the first round because I think at best they'll be a 6. More likely they're going to be a 7 seed. And when you get 7 to 10, those are teams that are probably in between 25th and 40th on the grid, so to speak. And there's in men's college basketball, unlike the women's game, where there's such a gap between the top 3 and the next 10, and then the next 10, the 50th team can easily beat the number 5 team in the nation in men's college basketball. It's that, flat line, depending on circumstances and who gets hot and, referees and 18 to 22, 23-year-olds making decisions, in high pressure situations. I think Maryland could easily lose in the first round. I think they could easily get to the Sweet 16. A lot of it's going to be based on how they're playing and it depends on the draw and depends on the mindset. How they carry through. I think that, Kevin Willard has done a fantastic job this season. I think he should be under heavy consideration for Big Ten Coach of the Year because heading into the season, I think we thought 7-8 wins might be the ceiling for this team in Big Ten play. And yeah, exactly. And I think they have a chance if they win at Ohio State or win at Penn State to secure a double bye. And hopefully, I think that this team also, not only do they have a chance to get to the Sweet 16, they have a chance to get to Saturday in the Big Ten tournament, which I don't think they've done since 2015 or 2016.
16, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to go one and done. I think that they can win a game, maybe 2. So I don't know that they're a Sweet 16 team, but I don't think that they're going to go one and done. It's not like the women's tournament where you can get some home games in there, especially in tournament. They play like they can't play away from home. So I think that's going to hurt them in the tournament. George Wallace, is this a Sweet 16 team?
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see them. I don't think they're one and done either. I don't know if it's a Sweet 16 team. I think, again, look, it just like the whole tournament depends on the draw. It really does.
Right.
And it is away from home. Yes, it is neutral. I mean, they played well at Barclays this year. Where else they play neutral? They went to the Bahamas, right?
Yeah.
Where was the tournament? Bahamas. So it does depend on the draw. I really do believe that. If they get shipped out west to Sacramento, maybe a different story. But if you're closer to home, Albany, Greensboro, you will get people to travel. These fans have been waiting for this for a long time. So that could help as well. I think it depends on the draw. I could see them going to the Sweet 16, but I could see them losing first or second round as well. I think that he has this team believe there. There's no mental issues with this team. Depending on when they go and play. Yeah, okay, playing on the road in the Big Ten is totally different. It's a different animal. Playing on the road in conference is a different animal for anything. That's fine. But he has them believing they can go and play with anybody. beat anybody anywhere. And I think that is a huge deal. Whereas before, maybe Mark Turgeon's teams took the court with a lot of stuff in the back of their mind, like, maybe we shouldn't be here. We can't win in this spot. We can't beat this team. So much doubt creeps in. But I think this team is playing with a ton of confidence. Now, there's still ways to go. You got 2 road games this week and then a Big Ten tournament. You could lose 3 straight too, heading into next weekend. So, but I do think that they do have the ability to play and get out of the first weekend, depending on the draw.
All right. We're up against the clock. I just want to part with this thought. The Tuesday night win for the Wizards in Atlanta opened a crucial 2-week stretch to their season. It was the first out of 5 games out of 7 in which they play the Hawks and the Raptors. Those are the 2 teams immediately ahead of them in the standings. And it's a really quirky scheduling. 4 of those 5 games are at home. They did win the road game, obviously, in Atlanta to start it off. It's hard to envision them losing all of those games, but they've got to at least post a winning record if the playoffs are a reality for that team. Dave Preston, who looks like
yeah, Rob, it's almost as though the NBA set its schedule and they just forgot to put some games in. And they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? So this is very weird because they play Toronto 2 times in a 3-day stretch, and then they play Atlanta in short order as well after playing them on the road. So, but what's impressive, what sets them up, 14 of their final 21 games in the regular season are at home. 11 of 16 in March will be at home. So the Wizards, they've shown signs this winter where they can catch fire from time to time. Granted, they then, play like a wet mop for a game or 2, but things are set up for them in March to get things done. I know that, as you mentioned, we're up against it this week. This year's Girl Scout cookie rankings, tag-alongs are number 1 on the sports page at WTOP.com. Check it out. This week's Beltway basketball beat. We also preview the CAA championship. If you have a chance to get out there this weekend, see some really fun teams play. Charleston's one of the highest scoring teams in the country. Hofstra's another exciting team as well. Towson and Delaware both played well last year. They're back in the mix at the entertainment and sports arena.
Well, delay of game on the DC Sports Huddle. It's a first. Derailed by Girl Scout cookies. How about that? Just reminding you that the episode is sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fan's paradise. Rob Woodfork signing off with, well, not at the moment, but still signing off with George Wallace and Dave Preston. We'll huddle up with you next week.